Thanks.
He's freaking beautiful.
Just trying to keep up with him.
Everything I've dreamed of. I want to be able to grow a mustache.
Yeah.
And,
Didn't you start to for a little bit or no?
oh yeah, I was like a week, and my wife was like, "You are disgusting."
I got the opposite. I have the opposite problem. She won't let me shave it.
That's nice though.
Yeah.
Because you look good in it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I just, you know what I look like. It's bad.
I appreciate you, man.
This is Riley.
Yep.
Enjoy.
Good to meet you guys.
You're gonna have a good chunk on Zoom.
Yeah,
So
that works.
make sure to use the microphone when you guys ask questions because they want to contribute. And when you ask questions, ask your Zoom mics too.
Okay. So I have a tendency normally when I teach to just kind of go off script. So this time I forced myself to print what they want me to teach you to actually have talking points. Because if not, I'll give you a lot of good information, but I'll just kind of ramble. So I'm going to try to keep it somewhat concise. But I'm Riley. I've been with KW now 2 years and I don't know, like 8 months. Basically, May will be my 3-year mark. Last year I was a rookie. Well, I was a rookie of the year for my first year. And then other than that, just been building a small team and doing my thing. So you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick so I can get familiar? What's your name? Rodney?
Yeah.
How long you been here?
Since mid-December.
Nice. I recognize your name. May have seen you on Facebook or something. What's your name?
Carla.
Carla? How long you been here?
Less than a month.
Nice. How's it going so far?
It's going.
Yeah, I heard you.
Trying to learn.
Yeah, right on offer. And then what was your name?
Mariah.
Mariah. Nice to meet you.
And I've been here about a month.
Perfect. So have you guys, it sounds like you were starting to work on an offer, but have you guys kind of dabbled in any of that so far? Okay, so my intention today is to obviously go through the slideshow, but I brought a couple different things I want to show you guys about like my process when I write an offer, and obviously show that on the screen for the most part for Zoom as well. But my intention is to give you guys obviously the Ignite teachings, but then maybe just kind of go off script and just have you guys for free format, ask me questions. I'll show you my process and that should help you. So getting started, obviously this is make and receive offers. So the majority of this will be focused on making offers because as a new agent, most of the time your first clients are going to be buyers, just statistically speaking, and most people. We'll also jump into obviously receiving and reviewing offers, but a lot of the way that you review offers is based on your knowledge of how to write offers, because then when you're looking at other agents' offers, you're going through a select amount of like, I imagine when I look at a contract, there's maybe 10 or 15 different points I review consistently that help me understand what terms are in these offers that either I'm writing or I'm receiving. And then, it'll kind of help you build from there. So let's see if we get this to work. I'll use the mouse, I guess. So what successful agents do every day? You guys have probably seen this every time through Ignite. So, oops, I don't know what I just did. Let's go back. So grow business, so lead generate for buyers and sellers, make seller listing presentations and get listings, make buyer presentations and get listings, preview real estate. So you guys have talked about a lot of this probably with previous Ignite instructors. Today, obviously, talking about the process of showing buyers houses, negotiating contracts, and kind of that whole process. So the offer process. So real quick, let me just go through this real fast. Have you guys got out and started showing buyers, or like, I guess I just want to know where you guys are at in your businesses because it might help me to know how much to explain.
I've sold one house, I'm listing another right now, but it's a kind of a, they weren't going to sell until June, but we got an offer from a 1031 to just buy it outright, so it won't even hit the market. I haven't done any buyer side stuff. I've done several open houses.
It's awesome. And then for you right now?
I just helped somebody show a couple houses.
Mhm.
They had COVID.
Yeah, getting familiar at least with that process. How about yourself? No. And then remind me, so Mariah, Rodney, Carla. Okay. And then who's on Zoom? Do you guys want to chime in real quick and introduce yourself? I'd love to hear from you guys as well.
I guess I can go first. You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Alexi Robledo. I've been with KW for maybe 2.5 months now, and I haven't done very much. I mean, I have a lead for a listing and hopefully getting that real soon. That's where I'm at.
That's awesome. Good to be. So you say your name was Lexi, right?
Yes, Alexi.
Alexi, perfect. I'm gonna write all this down. I'm so terrible with names. So is there anybody else on Zoom or just Alexi? Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of our expectations for today. I'll deep dive into some of the Ignite stuff, but then I'm going to just share my screen and kind of go through my process with you guys. Obviously, the goal of our time together today is learn to present offers when you're presenting a buyer, and then also going through offers when you are with a seller. having a good clean process for that. And like I say, I'll show you guys offers I've recently written so you can see kind of how I structure things. Even things like buyer letters, they're kind of a gray area. People, you know, they may pass legislators soon to make them illegal, but as of right now, it's just kind of a moral gray area. I play on it all day just because it gets my buyers under contract. But yeah, to begin, we'll review the offer process, which is what we're going to jump into next. And that will help you obviously negotiate with the seller's agent and understand how that works. So this process is more like a loop than a linear path, right? Because you're going to be making an offer. And then, you know, so I always tell my clients, because I think a lot of people, especially with your clients, the most important thing is education and expectation, right? The more you can educate them in the process and get them up to speed on your knowledge level, and then also set proper expectations for what's to come, the easier it's going to be to help them, you know, walk them through these kind of processes. The reason I say is a lot of people, when you use the term contracts, even they get nervous. They're like, oh, I don't know, like it makes people a lot like uneasy in today's, you know, like litigious world. A lot of people like to sue people and like they just don't have an understanding of the contracts a lot of the time. So the way I phrase things or the way you phrase things with your clients is super important. So I always tell my clients that just because you're writing an offer doesn't mean you're actually buying the house, right? It's basically just a formal way of talking to the seller in a way that's going to help us present what we're willing to do. And if it happens to work, great. If it doesn't, then we'll just have, you know, a learning lesson and strategize from there. So making an offer, you're obviously going to write up something, send it over to the seller's agent. Seller has the opportunity to respond in one of three ways. They're going to accept it as is. If that's the case, hoorah, you know, you begin the contract to close process. You guys are accepted. They can counter the offer. And then obviously that goes into negotiations, or they could just flat out reject the offer. I would say 90% of modern agents, like you have a lot of the old school agents who will like send you like a signed rejection. A lot of agents nowadays, because like if people are just being lazy, they just don't even reject. They just ignore your offer sometimes. Like if you don't win, they'll probably tell you, hey, sorry, it wasn't you, but you're never going to get like a formal rejection. It's just kind of like a heads up, right? So obviously if they reject your offer, then, you know, they're going to contact you or vice versa. And then don't assume no means no. They put that in there just because there could be a last chance. If they haven't already countered another offer, haven't already put pen to paper, and they're just saying, we're probably going to go this way, always use it as a last, you know, ditch effort to say, what could we do to improve our offer? Or, you know, typically speaking, you want to structure your offer so you get first right of refusal. What I mean by that is you want to structure your offer in an open-ended way with clauses and the way you write things to leave room for negotiation. So in case maybe you're a little short of the other offer, but the rest of your terms are really strong, like you basically want to set up as many things as possible, which we'll jump into, to allow that seller's agent to see your offer and go, okay, it may not be the highest price, but the rest of the terms are good. Or they threw a clause in here that allows us to escalate their offer up to match the other buyer's offer. Does that make sense? And then obviously counter. So they may just flat out say, hey, you know, this buyer offered 405, you're at 395, but your terms are better, pay, you know, at least 400 and the deal's yours kind of thing. So that's kind of how that works. Obviously, like we kind of already talked about, you guys, it sounds like you've closed one so far. Was that a buyer? Seller. Oh, you see, you're the anomaly. Most people were buyers first. So good job. But emotions are running hot for both parties during this time. So it's your job to just make sure you're explaining everything to your client. And so, like I say, expectations are everything. So I would encourage you guys, and I'm even happy to share mine with you to have you model after. The great thing about KW is everybody's pretty open book, and it's not going to hurt me if you use the same material I do or teach the same way. In fact, it'll just make us all better agents, right? So anything I can share with you guys, but outside of this, just when you get new clients, it's always good to have a meeting of some sort to educate them. So don't just assume they know anything. It's always good. And you can always phrase things because you don't want to make anybody feel stupid. We can always say, hey, you probably know this already, but X, Y, and Z, right? It's an easy way to help set proper expectations for them, because you're going to have some clients who are either so naive that like you have to explain every little thing. Like they've never done anything of this type of seriousness in their life. So they don't even understand where to begin. And that obviously can cause some fear or limiting belief, but also, you know, simple things like you may have like kind of a know-it-all client who really doesn't know a lot, but you have to ease your way into, you know, establishing yourself as that resource where they can listen to you and they're willing to kind of set their barriers down and hear what you have to say and, you know, set proper expectations. But with my buyers, I always sit down ahead of time before we even get them approved most of the time or start showing houses, and I teach them the process. So that way, by the time we get to this step, it's not a, oh, by the way, it's do you remember when, right? Like we spoke about this at some point in time. Other than that, let me see if there's anything else I need to go to on this. Let's see. KW app also has buyer guides that you guys can set up. I did like when I first used the app, but I haven't really touched them since. I just do an in-person appointment, but you can set up some other things like that, like fail safes, where if they're on your app, they can see what's your guide. And then you can like write notes in there to have them be educated or referred to. Yeah, pretty much that's all. we're not going to be covering the negotiation aspects of the offer. That's what this wants me to say. I would love to, though, honestly, just show you guys at least a little bit. Now that we have an idea of how the process works, we're going to jump into how we can prepare the offer. Any questions with that from Zoom or here? Okay, perfect. So preparing your offer, a little preparation goes a long way. So we're going to go over some resources that you guys can use to prepare your offer. So it talks about using a checklist in here. I think that's a great idea. I think that checklists are an easy way to make sure that obviously at a certain point, you're going to get to a point where it's just kind of muscle memory. And it's like you can throw together an offer in the car on the way to dinner with your spouse or something. Like it's not a big deal. But initially, you would hate to be that person that accidentally, says it's not contingent upon like appraisal or something, and then you end up getting your client in a really bad spot because you weren't paying attention or you missed a document or a signature. And credibility is a big thing. Like I still make mistakes sometimes where like I'm not paying attention, I accidentally like attach like the unsigned, like I have 2 copies of the offer, my computer, I'll attach the unsigned copy and be like, oh crap, send them another email. Sorry, I selected the wrong one. It still happens, but having a checklist will help reduce that. And it's all in the way you handle it, but you do want to do as much as possible to feel credible to the listing agent, right? Because you don't want to be that guy that's sending in an offer. They don't even know who you are. You've never texted or called them. Randomly they get a signed rep-c in the inbox with no pre-approval letter, no description, no formality, right? You want to have you want to spice it up as much as you can. So when they see your offer and your email come across, it's like you've already spoken to them on probably multiple occasions. They know your name because you've shared your contact info with them. You've set an expectation of your buyer's circumstances preliminarily. You address kind of a brief cover letter of the offer in the email. You've got clean, concise, documentation, organized, labeled properly. So like when they get to it, it's like, oh, you're like a dream agent, or you know what I mean? You don't want to be the person that they're, hey, where's their pre-approval letter? What's this? What's that? Like clean and concise is going to go a long way. Because then when they're preparing the offer to represent, or like for you guys, when you're presenting offers to your seller, the person that stands out to you is going to be the one that had their stuff together, to where you can just easily be like, yeah, this guy's a rock star, like, or this girl's a rock star, right? Like they had everything ready to go. I've already, like their lender even called me. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of little things you can do like that that will make a big difference. But here it talks about obtaining the buyer's pre-approval letter from their lender. I don't ever get pre-approval letters that have the address on them because I don't want to have to bug my lender at 10 o'clock on Sunday if I have to write an offer. I get in today's market, in different markets, it makes sense to have it set to a certain number. Like, back in 2019, for example, when I write offers, I would go in and adjust the pre-approval letter to the purchase price, because back then you didn't always have to compete with multiple offers. You didn't want to show that your buyer is able to pay 405 and you're offering 360. You know what I mean? But nowadays, I say get the pre-approval letter for the absolute max and have no address on there and as much information to make them look strong, but not too much to where it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like certain lenders, like you don't obviously control that, but certain lenders have different ways they write pre-approval letters. But I recommend having the maximum on there, just because then like the seller's agent knows if you're looking at a house, it's 405, but they're approved for 450, like they're actually good. Does that make sense? So making sure you obtain a pre-approval letter, produce a CMA. So what I usually do there, it depends on the client, because there's some clients that are like, I don't care, you tell me. And there's some clients that are like, I need to know like the information, So doing a CMA where you can basically pull up like an idea, and I'll usually ask the listing agent too when I'm, calling to talk about writing an offer. I'll ask him, so when you pulled comps on this, how do you feel about appraisal? Sometimes like you can just look at a house and know like, oh, that's underpriced. Like, and you'll know like if there's 15 offers in the first 2 days, like chances are you're not going to have any issue justifying that value, or it's not going to matter, because even if you told your client, I don't think it's worth that, 15 other people do. So you're never going to win that race. You know what I mean? But it's always good to at least give that option to your clients of saying, hey, if you want me to crunch some numbers and give you an idea of what I realistically think this house will, I always use the word appraise for, because worth is relative, right? It's objective. Like if 10 buyers are willing to pay 10,000 over asking, but it might only appraise for 10,000 less. But then I use that as a good starting point for that conversation. And then I also will obviously talk to the listing agent and try to get as much information as possible about what other offers they have, if they have permission to discuss terms. That's the one thing to keep in mind, totally unrelated to this. But when you talk to listing agents, some will give you a lot of information, some will give you very little, but it's all in the way you ask questions. And I'm happy to like prepare something to help you guys understand what questions to ask. But it's always good to ask at some point in the conversation, do you have permission to disclose terms of the other offer? And if they say no, then I always follow that up with asking essentially the same thing in a different way. Okay, well, I know you can't tell me a specific number, but are your offers above 400? Does that make sense? Because you're getting the same information one way or another. So in the way you ask questions, it's super important, but that's going to help your client also know realistically if they have a chance. Like if you're approved up to 390, we're looking at a house that's 375 and all their offers are 395 plus, it's probably not worth even going for, kind of thing. Review tax records for information about pricing history. So I'll show you how to do that, but it's super simple. On your MLS sheet, there's a blue tax ID. You click on that. It's going to pull up your tax information. So how much your yearly taxes are, which is always good to give the lender if it's a property you're kind of like near their max on, because then you can also, like I had one on Saturday I wrote where their max was 390. We're probably going to go to 390. I actually called the lender, gave them the yearly taxes. They hurried and crunched their numbers and ran, their approval again. And we had a little bit more wiggle room on this specific property because the taxes were a little lower, and that helped us put in a better offer. And then also in the tax records, you're going to see a history if the house has ever been listed. That's always a good thing to check, because I've had clients look at a house that says it's a 3-bedroom, but the last 5 times it was sold, it was a 2-bedroom. So what changed? Well, really nothing. They're just honestly just BSing. You know what I mean? It's always good to know that stuff. And then also just see a history of the house just for fun, honestly, sometimes. Ensure the property is still available before spending any time preparing an offer. So even if the MLS indicates listing is active, that's why you always just call the listing agent. Like if I go show a house on Friday and, even on the MLS, it doesn't say when offers are due, the first thing I'm doing if my client says they like it is I'm calling that agent right then when are offers due, getting, the preliminary questions out of the way. If they say, oh, they're not due till Monday, okay, great. I'll just follow back up with you on Sunday or Monday. I'm kind of under the impression it depends, and I always ask the listing agent, like, are you planning on holding out on offers either way? Or if I send you something really strong, would you look at it now? Because you don't want to be the person that assumes, okay, they said Monday, and then you find out it goes under contract Saturday, Sunday. The start of last year, especially, that happened all the time, where they would say, oh, no showings until, the open house. And the next thing you know, it's off the market on Thursday. Your client never even got a chance to see it. So you always want to be in constant communication and make sure you're like testing the validity of what they say, because they could say, we're going to look at offers Sunday, but what if the seller had 20 showings Friday and they're done? They may look at offers Friday night. Does that make sense? So staying in touch and knowing what's happening is super important. But again, a lot of the time your client may send you a property that's been on the market 8 days and you're like, oh, this is still on the market, but it's just because they're reviewing offers, right? So it's always good to check in and make sure, hey, is this actually available before you get your client all excited about it and move on. This talks about building rapport with the listing agent. I think that's super important. And I think a lot of that just comes through, you'd be surprised. There are a lot of agents that just flat out suck. They're just kind of incompetent. If you can just be a little better, it's going to show. If you can just try to, not that you have to sound like a know-it-all on the phone and you don't want to like be boastful, like, oh, by the way, I'm a top 8, like none of that. But just the way you ask questions and like conduct yourself is going to show through. So building rapport can be as simple as establishing the fact you'd be a good agent to work with based on the way that you felt the conversation went with that agent. But then also like just being friendly. A lot of people in today's day and age just don't know how to be friendly. Not saying you have to have like a fake phone voice or something, but like just try to genuinely be interested in what they have to say and explain, the position your clients are in, so you can hopefully get a leg up and get information. Information in negotiation is everything. And the more you can get the listing agent to tell you above and beyond what they've told other agents, obviously the better chances you have. I've literally got to the point with some agents on the phone after I talked to them for 10 minutes where we're like kind of building that relationship. And I'm like, okay, just shoot me straight. Like, what do I need to do to win? And they're like, okay, well, our highest offer is 405. Like, just give me something, you know what I mean? And I've won deals just because I just took the time to have that conversation. Even like I could give you 100 examples, but just getting in the habit of being that communicator, that friendly face is going to help you, and obviously be credible as well, was going to help you a lot long term. Time is of the essence when your clients want to write an offer. Be prepared to use checklists. So Ignite Toolkit obviously has some checklists as well. There's a lot of KW material out there to help you have a basic framework to get started, especially as a solo agent. Obviously, you guys are, I'm assuming, on Carl's coaching team. So a lot of that stuff has helped with you, and you obviously have like Jen Gray and everything like that to help fill in, the gaps in some way, shape, or form. But other than that, yeah, so use the resources you guys have. Hopefully that all made sense. We're going to move on to the next section, which is write the offer. So putting a stellar offer together, this is where you shine. So let me flip the page real quick. So our goal in this section is help you put together an offer that you and your clients can be proud of. This is your chance to shine. And that's what I always tell my clients too, is that really the offer phase is where the teamwork really happens between the lender, the agent, and the buyer, right? Because that's where everybody has to be on the same page and know kind of our situation really well, or our limitations, so we can make stuff happen. So basic checklist to write an offer, price and terms, consult with your buyer to arrive at the most logical offering based on CMA and the items below. Seller's disclosure. So that's not, in Utah, that's not a common practice for them to put it on the MLS, right? But sometimes in the attached documents in the bottom right corner, you'll see seller's disclosure or lease agreement or applicable documents. It's always good if that's there, send it to your client ahead of time. And sometimes it's even good if it's there to have them sign it with your offer. So by the time you send your offer listing agent, like you've already got that step ahead, you're one step ahead. Conveyances. So this is basically what items are going to be staying with the home. You can obviously review the seller's disclosure statement. And so like ours talks about it a little bit, but besides the point, attached fixtures stay and movable items go with the seller. So it's always good if there's a, like the last house I put under contract, the agent put on the MLS that the dog run was excluded. But when you go to the house, there's no dog run, there's just extra fencing. And so like, are they going to take the fencing? Like, I don't understand, So it's always good to check with that kind of stuff. Earnest money. So that's the deposit the buyer makes. So how it works is when you write an offer, it's not due then, it's due if you get it accepted. I always make sure to tell my clients that, right, when I'm explaining it. But within 1 to 4 days of going under contract, that's when the money has to be deposited here, right? This talks about in many markets, 2 to 3% of the price is normal. Utah, I would say 1% is a solid starting point. It depends on the price point. A long time ago, $500 to $1,000 was all you needed. And some cases that's still, if it's like a house with no offers, maybe. But I always recommend trying to have your clients put at least 1% down. And then obviously it says check with your team leader or broker to see how earnest money is handled. Super simple process here. You can bring a cashier's check to the front desk and they'll help you, or you can do an app called Earnest. And it's held in an escrow account. In most states here, it's held in our trust account where it's not touchable by either party. Time for seller acceptance. Be sure to specify the time for acceptance. So on your offer, you preliminarily will state when the acceptance deadline is, and that's when you would hope to have a response from the seller by. But again, that's when you always double check and see when are you actually reviewing offers, because it makes no sense to send them an offer with a 12-hour acceptance if they're not reviewing for 3 days. Financing terms. Make sure the financing terms will be agreeable to your buyer and seller. Always check on so especially with FHA buyers, this is the one that always gets me personally. If you have a buyer that's a first-time buyer that's like, you're doing Utah housing or some form of FHA loan, always make sure the property you're showing them says in terms FHA. And if it doesn't, call the listing agent, because 90% of the time, companies like Homey or agents who have their assistant upload their listings, they don't check it for some reason. So I would say 50% of the time it's done in error. They're actually okay with FHA offers. It's always good to call and ask. And then sometimes they're like flat out no. There's also, this is totally off the cuff information, but I'm gonna tell you anyways because it's on my mind. There's a flipping rule. So if a house has been remodeled and flipped and sold within 90 days, you cannot do an FHA loan on it. So if there's ever a house that's been remodeled that like you go show your client that looks like it was just done, like a fresh flip, always verify when it was actually last sold. Because I put one under contract before we actually had to cancel halfway through because that wasn't disclosed to us and they didn't know. And I was a newer agent, so I didn't know, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they accept?
So FHA is interesting because think of it this way. It's almost like, do you guys know what subprime loans are? Okay, so like in the I don't know, like in the auto industry, for example, like someone with stellar credit would usually finance with like a credit union, but a subprime loan is like a third party loan for people like that are more disadvantaged financially or have lower credit score, right? So FHA is, I don't want to say subprime, it's a great program. Honestly, it's a fantastic program, but a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth because normally the buyers doing FHA either have higher debt to income or less money available or a lower credit score, which can all be disadvantages for financial strength. And then they also have a special inspection they do as a part of the appraisal that if the house has chipping paint or missing handrails or wires exposed, missing outlet covers, like stupid stuff like that, they can always flag the house and say, oh, you can't buy it till those things are addressed. And that could cost us 5 business days because it could take us a few days to get someone out there to fix the issue. And then you have to get the appraiser to go back out. And then the third thing or fourth thing, I don't know what I'm at this point, but the appraisal on FHA will stay on a property for 6 months. So if there's a low appraisal on a property that's FHA, every FHA buyer for the next 6 months, that is their appraised value, right? Which can be a big disadvantage. But they're a great program. I would say probably 7 out of 10 of my buyers do FHA programs just because I work with a lot of first-time buyers or lower financial or disadvantage, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's all about how you write the offer. And there's a lot of benefits for FHA too. There's some loopholes and stuff we can talk about later. I don't want to bombard you with so much where you're just confused, but eventually ask me. There's a cool FHA loophole with the FHA addendum where you can get your client's earnest money back if the appraisal comes in low, even if you've stated that their earnest money is non-refundable in the contract. I've used that before. So just like there's stuff like that. But if agents know about that, that also might make them a little nervous, because they're like, it doesn't really mean it's non-refundable. But to write an offer, so you'll obviously need to obtain a copy of the contract or purchase agreement used on the MLS, which I'll show you guys how to get to. Use your checklist. Again, having some form of system for how you follow things is going to help you guys not make mistakes, because it's just as simple as, did I do this? Yes. Did I do this? Yes. So on. So I already talked about some tips I have for writing an offer. We'll actually jump into some more stuff too. When you're new at writing offers, a lot of it is just making sure you got everything, because you guys probably have done your case studies or doing something. So you can understand how there's a lot of documents to refer back to. Oh, I actually missed checking this box, or on this offer, it doesn't have an addendum, so I need to go check that. Like there's like these little things, right? That's what I referred to earlier when I said, when I'm looking at an offer, there's maybe 15 sections that I'm quickly scanning through, because those are the only changeable terms. Like I'm not going to read the fine print of the contract every time, because it's fixed. It's not adjustable. The only things that are adjustable obviously is like addenda. But other than that, like once you get familiar with the Repsy enough, it's like, okay, what's their earnest money? How much are they offering on the house? Is it contingent on a sale? What are they asking to be included? What terms are they included? And when do we have the timeline in place to respond, as well as, their timeline for their contract, and then any applicable addenda. And Command has a really good way to review offers too, and I'll show you. But you can go through and put in the information and leave notes at the end, pros and cons. So that's good for you, because then when you're going through them, you can actually write out like, no, this one had low earnest money, but the rest of the terms are good. Or this one has no appraisal waiver, so it's fantastic, like exclamation point. And then it's also cool because when you present with your seller, you can then use that tool. So you don't have to have 15, like I've reviewed 19 offers with the seller before. Like that's tedious, like if you had to go through each contract with them, that's like so much versus just compiling your notes, giving them a bird's eye view, and then you have your own notes to say, oh yeah, this one was 550, they had no appraisal waiver, I think that one was better than this third offer. That, you know what I'm saying? It makes it easy.
You have to go over each offer with your clients. That doesn't mean you have to go over it. You just need to give them the highlights.
Essentially, you want to do a great job at that though, because especially when you're newer, I don't think it's a terrible idea to just have the contracts handy in case they want to see them. Because the worst thing you could do, and I've even done this, where on Command, the only downside is that the contract's not there. So if for some reason in your investigation you missed one thing or didn't write detailed notes, you may forget a term. Like what, I don't know, like I'll see if I can think of an example that's happened to me, but earnest money with title is a big one. Like a lot of companies around here, especially like Homey, they'll try to put their earnest money with a title company. You don't want that to happen 9 times out of 10. Like if it's a requirement, like you can't get them to budge, okay, but that's never happened. Like I've always required them to put it here. The reason why is because when you put earnest money with a title company, let's say the buyer cancels and defaults and you're representing the seller, in order for you to get that earnest money for your seller, which should be, owed to them at that point, normally, you have to have both the buyer and the seller sign off on it. Well, what are the odds the buyer is going to say, yeah, let me get rid of my $5,000? Does that make sense? You're going to put yourself in a situation where you may not ever get that money. And they do that somewhat for that reason, but also they don't have like a trust account at their brokerage is the whole thing. But so it's always good to make sure that you are reviewing them very, very, very thoroughly. So I would almost say initially put together, like I say, a checklist of reviewing them, even have another agent like me kind of maybe give you a second glance on your first couple listings, just unless it's like yours where it's like one and done, that's super simple. Like it's very straightforward. But like when you get to the point where you're doing 9 or more offers, they kind of just bleed together. Yeah. So, I mean, that's great for you. My first, so similarly, my first buyer was multiple offer situation back in 2019 when that was like, it was common, but it wasn't that common. I had to beat 8 other offers to get my buyer under contract. So that baptism by fire to have to beat those offers. So write not only a good enough offer for my first offer, which I don't really know what the hell I'm doing, and then try to beat 8 other experienced agents to get the property. Like it was such a good learning experience because it gave me a really good grasp on what to do in the future. And obviously that was before things were nuts. So as things got really heated in the last couple of years, I just got progressively better at writing offers because I had that initial kind of lesson. But yeah, I mean, I'll help you guys. Like I say, checklists are super important. I'll show you guys what that looks like in real life.
As far as having earnest money here instead of a title. So if I've known about that, if the client doesn't sign off, then you don't get it. But if it's here,
it's neutral. Yeah, I mean, or not neutral. It's neutral, like in the sense that we can't determine, but it's automatically given to the party who deserves it based on the terms of the contract. So with the title company, they have that like almost safeguard step that we don't. Which, like I say, it's safer here. And like as a good agent, like I have not lost anybody's earnest money. And I've been in some hairy situations before with my buyers, like losing their job. Like I had one client, like my first, this is in 2020, but within my first like 12 months of being in real estate, they were a first time buyer. The market started heating up. They had absolutely no cash. So it was beating multiple offers to get them under contract. It took them about 2 months and writing probably 20 offers to get them under contract. Cause up in like the Kearns area, there was these little ramblers that were like 1,400 square feet that were like 230, like just cheap, right? The market progressed and probably like in that area went up like 20 grand in 3 months. We finally got them under contract on a house. About 20 days in, they lost their job. So they got a new job. About another 25 days in, they got collections on their credit. So 66 days later total, we finally signed and we did not lose their earnest money. And that buyer had a backup, or the seller had a backup offer. So I was just like doing my best to keep kind of stringing the listing agent along and keep things together. And that was very stressful, but we got it done. But if we would have defaulted, then the earnest money would have automatically went to the seller because it was here. But that's like best practice to have it here just because it's, I don't know, in my opinion, but.
Yeah, I was just looking at
Mhm.
remarks, like, they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, which is wild, but, and I see why they do it. If they don't have a trust account, like having a trust account with 300 agents gets a little scary because there's like like FDIC only insures $250,000. What if the brokerage has $1 million in earnest money and then something were to happen to the financial system and we lost $700,000 or whatever? It doesn't make sense. That's where it gets a little hairy, but logistically in contractual terms, it makes the most sense because it's a fair like agreement. Does that make sense? Okay, with that being said, I think we'll jump to the next section unless you guys have questions. So this is kind of like not really a deep dive, like I kind of said more than it probably wanted me to, but that's like a simple overview, like best practices for writing an offer with a checklist. But next, we're actually going to talk about creating an offer in Command. So this is where I can take over. Okay, so a couple things. So with my way of doing things is in Command, I've set up already buyer docs, buyer offer docs. And then what I'll do is when I have a new client, I'll delete these eventually. Like probably a month ago, I had like 4 pages worth of stuff in here. I finally went through and cleaned it out, which is great. But you'll see I have my clients' names. Like this one I got to delete. This is from like 2021. But my point is I'll go through and I'll actually name them based on the client. So I can easily, like, especially if it's a client where you're going to be writing multiple offers because, you know, they're first time buyer, like it's a hot market, whatever. It's always good to have their stuff in one category on the MLS. So it's easy to refer to. So you don't have to rewrite things as things, you know, things progress. But I always have my packet set up to where I can say, okay, buyer offer docs, I can jump in here. I edited this like 2 days ago when I wrote an offer for my clients, Glenn and Kenzie. So obviously when you're going through, you have the documents you would normally use for, you know, writing an offer in that sense. And then I'll jump into Command real quick because we can come back to this towards the end when we have a little more time. So when you're going into Command, you're going to go over to opportunities. And then I would say, I don't know, let's see. I wonder if I can find a past one that I've done. I'll use a listing as an example, just because I feel like that will be easier for you guys to see both on the review side, but also how to input. Let me hear and just find one real quick. So this one had 4 offers, so it's a good one, has multiple. So when you actually go through and add an offer, so you can do this on the buy or sell side, right? When you're writing an offer. So initial offer, when you're doing like, or working with the buyer, you can always say initial offer because that's easier to refer back to if there's ever, you know, changes in terms or you write other offers down the road on that same property, or like whatever counter offers and whatnot. So let's just say I go in here and I do initial offer. So I can say name of the offer, the dates. So what day do we write the offer? What day is the expected close date? Who's involved, right? So name a buyer and the seller. If you have their information, like if they're your client, it'll pre-fill. You don't have to have the other like clients. Like if you're representing the buyer, you have the seller's email and phone number, but the name, you can do the address, obviously. When you're reviewing offers with your seller, it's always best practice to go through and check these boxes. So you can say, is this buyer pre-approved? Yeah, they are. Okay, sweet. So then when you're referring to your notes later, it'll actually say on there, are they pre-approved or not? And then you can reference that. Hey, this one, they didn't actually give me a pre-approval letter. So probably don't pick this one because we don't even know who the lender is. Does that make sense? And you can obviously get that information, but if it's a really, really, really bad offer, like I got one on this, actually, I think on this listing, lowball offer, and it didn't have a pre-approval letter, I'm not going to call the agent and say, who's your lender? Because my clients are never going to accept that offer. But if it is a decent offer, or at least like applicable, then it is always best practice to get their pre-approval letter, even if the agent wasn't competent enough to send it the first time. Associate's name, so these are the agents involved, right? And then obviously phone number if you choose to. I usually don't do like the information for the agent because I know who it is. Like as long as it's listed there for like, you know, your notes essentially to refer to, that's fine. But I don't put like their email and phone number in there personally. So then terms, so I get to go to the next section. Come on now. So then terms, this is where you can go through and kind of review those terms I was telling you guys about on the contract. So you can talk about how much cash they have. So the buyer's doing, let's say $10,000 down, they're financing 290. So their total purchase price is 300, right? That's how you do that. Earnest money. So obviously you can do percentage amount, but let's just say 1% like I was talking about. So $3,000. Option fee. So I believe this is if you're doing a transaction fee. I don't charge one, so I don't put anything in there. Termination option, buyer will give notice of termination within this many days. So my interpretation of this is how long into the contract they could still cancel. Like basically, let's assume they're financing an appraisal deadline. So when you're representing a buyer, there's obviously 4 deadlines on the rep sheet, but up until the 3rd deadline, normally it's financing an appraisal, the buyer can cancel and still get their earnest money, unless the agent that wrote the offer put terms in there that changes that, like earnest money non-refundable at acceptance or after inspection or so on, right? And then closing costs. So seller will contribute this much to basically a home warranty, right? Because residential service contract, and then the seller will contribute X amount of dollars to settlement costs. So you can, if you're writing the offer, you can go through here and leave this for your notes. But if you're reviewing offers, it's always super important to put stuff in here because then you can calculate their net at the end, right? Like if this one had closing costs, the other one didn't. It's always good to know. And then agent analysis, pros and cons. So again, you can come in here and say like, hi, earnest money. I'm going to butcher typing because this thing's like crooked a little bit, but highest earnest money, and then cons, closing costs. Closing costs, like I said, I can't type on this thing, but like of 4,000, okay? And then summary to your seller, you can say, so normally here, I'll put most of my notes in pros and cons. Summary, I'll usually, if there's something more important for them to know, I'll put it there, but I'll actually say net to seller if appraises. And I do this, so before I go review with them, I have an app on my phone for my title company that I can plug in all the numbers and it'll actually give them a quote on what they would make when we close. So by the time I sit down to review with my seller, the offer, they already know, hey, this one's going to net you 290, this one's 295. So they can see in real time how that actually affects, if I pick this offer, what am I going to make? And I always keyword if appraises, because if it's a over asking price offer, there's always a chance it may not appraise. So I always make sure I'm clear on that. Like, hey, you're not guaranteed 400. You could make 400 if this offer appraises, but if it doesn't, then you're not going to, right? And net is like the actual take home to the seller, like cash in hand when it's all said and done, after your commissions, after everything, right? So hopefully that makes sense. That's how you put an offer into command. It's kind of like, this is a super simplified version, but once you get good at actually going through your offers, this will be enough because you'll be able to refer back to and remember what's going on per offer. If that makes sense. Any questions there? Okay. Any questions on Zoom? Okay. Oh, you know what? Am I sharing?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you showed us that from if you're presenting offers to the seller,
Right.
correct? So you can use that if you're, how would that apply to a buyer? Sorry.
So yeah, it's a great question. I'm happy you brought that up. So let's say for this buyer here, McKay, I'm gonna write an offer. It's the same thing, to be honest with you, but the difference is best practice. So this one, like you can select from KWS. So I don't know, let me think of it. I have no idea an address off the top of my head. Let me find something. I'll go through this section of it too. So it's best practice. I'll just be straight with you. I don't do this. I probably should, but I don't do it.
Okay.
The reason you should do this is because when you're writing contracts for buyers, you always have to keep record of what you've written, even if the offer didn't get accepted and have it available somewhere. I just put all my stuff in Docusign Rooms and I just label so when I write an offer for my buyers, I'll write like the actual document name. So it'll have like, let's say the Rep C addenda, whatever. I'll actually label it like 1234 Street offer dash Riley at KW for 2 reasons. So when I'm submitting the offer to the seller's agent, right, like listing agent, they can see in their files that it has my name on it and the address name. And I also subject line my email the same. So it's just all, I guess it's consistent. But let me think of a property because I just wrote an offer for a couple of my clients. Let me just see real quick. Let's see. Okay, 5007. We'll go off that one. All right, I'm just going to do this one right here. Okay, so let's assume we're going off this offer real quick. So you can go through buyer name, seller name, etc., associate's name, like we talked about. So I'm just going to put in some random stuff just so I can get past this section. Okay, moving on. And then again, it's the exact same setup. The only difference is preliminarily ask for what property you're writing the offer on, right? And so you can save these just to have like record, like I say, of what offers you have written. The brokerage doesn't necessarily they best practices to do this, but as long as you have some way, like a file, like long time ago, it was like literally like a filing cabinet, but like now obviously it's digital. As long as you have some way of getting to those offers that you've written for your client, that's all that matters. That is that you have record of them. So in Docusign Rooms, have you guys played around with Docusign Rooms? You can actually create a second folder within Docusign Rooms, select a handful of documents and put it there. So it doesn't show up in the main folder, but it's a second subfolder. Once I'm done writing offers for a client, we go under contract. I take all the old offers I've written and I literally label a folder old offers and I'll put it in there. So there's record of everything I've written for them accessible, but it's not in the way of my main transaction documents, right? Hopefully that answers your question, but it's the same process. The only difference is this is for record keeping, and then obviously you can go through and make changes if it that's why they say initial offer first and then like final offer, maybe the second one after you've gone through and tweaked the terms on what's actually accepted. And then the last thing, this tab is called offers and commissions for a reason. So what we do on my team or my process is once we get the offer accepted, we put it into command and then we submit it to the brokerage so they know what our commissions will be preliminarily. That's how you get paid, right? Is them having record of that. So that's where we put that into the process. But like, I don't literally go into command after every time I write an offer and plug in all the details. It's only when I get it accepted. But like I say, have record of that just in case, so you don't get in a pinch if anything legal ever happened. Other than that, so here in a second, I'll have me talk about some more stuff for offers. But like I say, best practice, if you guys want to take notes on this, is to have a packet of all the documents you typically will use for a buyer accessible in the MLS. So you don't have to every single time, not only for efficiency's sake, go in and recreate a packet, but it's easy as making a copy, labeling it the client name, and you've got everything ready to go and you can preload it. Another thing too, so I'll just demonstrate this real quick. A couple like little tips in writing offers. This house might be off the market. So crazy story, you guys will have some interesting experiences in real estate, but this house right here, so it's still listed, but the other listing got taken off. I wrote an offer on this over the weekend. We would have won. I confirmed that. So I would have put it under contract, but if you can notice, it's been on the market 10 days. This agent actually passed away, which is super sad. And then the seller relisted with like one of his associates. And then, obviously they got discouraged and tubed out, but that's not like, it's crazy. Like you guys are going to see some interesting things and people and experiences throughout this process. Let me show you something real quick. So what you can do to make writing offers easier is a couple things. So you have your packet pulled up here, right? So like, let's say I'm going to prepare an offer right now, like from scratch for Glenn and Kenzie. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put the MLS number here, right? I can hit load. It will preload all the information from the listing already, right? Then I can come back to this tab. Earlier, we referenced the tax data. This is where you find it. It's blue hyperlink, right? There's two things you can do. You can hit history, right? And you'll see all the times that this house has been listed. So I can go back to like, let's say 2002, and it's a $92,000 house. Now it's like 375,000, right? Secondly, you can also click the tax ID, and in here, you're going to see the yearly taxes. So you'll know that number up front, right? A couple little tidbits there. And then this is just a good area to find information, especially if you're going to have a listing, because then you can go through and check what the county has on file, confirm those numbers with your client and so on. But anyways, so then I can come in here. I can also find the seller name. So a lot of good agents, what they should do is put the name of the seller down here. They just put the last name on this one, which is fine. But in here, you can actually find the seller's name. So that way you can put it in here for Craig and Kathy Holder. And you can even pre-fill your date offer. So you can hit fill fields. And then by the time you get here, obviously double check, but the pre-filled information is there. So you just have to focus on your terms. Terms being, okay, I'm going to do how much of earnest money, are we asking for any other inclusions? What's our purchase price? Here's all the numbers, how they configure. Is the property contingent upon them selling a house, so on, right? So that's just a couple little tips to make it more efficient for you and to be able to refer back to, like I say, eventually you get to the point where You can write an offer in like 5 minutes because it just is like, you ask your client the questions ahead of time. What do you feel comfortable offering on this house? Like we have that kind of preliminary discussion. I encourage them to use certain terms to win. Like, hey, I think in this one, you're going to need to, like, I never say you have to. I just say, based on my conversation with the listing agent and filling this out, I think that a winning offer would look something like this. How do you feel? And we go back and forth and kind of like come up with what we feel is the best, and then we can submit it and, you know, see how it goes, kind of thing. But that's how you add offers to command. And like, again, a couple best practices for putting your offers in, like writing your offers in the MLS. How do I get back to the freaking, oh, it's over here, isn't it? Or the, I hate Apple computers. I don't know how people use them. I'll go back to this real quick, and then we might have to come back to that screen in a moment. Offer writing guidelines. So we're going to move on real quick. Went through that. Keep guidelines in mind and use a checklist in your toolkit called Checklist to Write an Offer as you write an offer. Like I say, your high performance team has some form of system and stuff for that, but ensure the buyer knows that all checks, earnest money are written at the same time. Okay, so I don't actually do this. This says to have your checks written at the time the offer is written. I don't think there's a point of that because like, I don't like, that's like kind of a waste of checks, honestly, you know, just being honest. You don't have to deposit it until you have your offer accepted, and that's within 4 days of acceptance. So if you get an offer accepted on Friday, just make sure they turn it in like Monday, because you only have until Tuesday. Like, don't, you know, make sure you set that expectation. In command, obtain the appropriate offer to purchase forms. So that's actually not accurate either. MLS, and you upload them to Docusign. I don't actually use command to source any documents. Bring your laptop or tablet with you when you meet with your client to review the offer and respond online. Most of the time I don't write them in person. There's sometimes like if we're out showing how, like I've been like, there's a day I showed like 17 houses straight to one client, and then we just sat at a Starbucks after like 10 o'clock at night and wrote an offer, right? So sometimes that happens, but honestly, I usually go back to the office, do my preliminary research on comps, like check out, call the agent, so on and so forth. And then I'll call my client with that info. And if I have to do a Zoom call and share my screen, I can, but just find out what works for you. As long as your client feels like you're competent and you're giving them information so they feel comfortable with you, like there's no right way to do it. Just make sure you give them the information and discuss it. When your buyer writes an offer, they're essentially selling themselves to the homeowner. That's a great tip. That's what I tell my clients too. You're basically telling the seller why they should pick you, right? So do your best job. This is something I want to show you guys, a cover letter. So I can hand this out to you guys, or I can show you, because I'll probably just show you because of Zoom. Honestly, I didn't know if there would be people on Zoom. But this is something that, let's see. So this is something that you guys can use. So their example, I don't know if I can actually find that. I don't know if it's on the slideshow. Let me just double check real quick. Hold on. So their version of a cover letter looks like this. And this is probably better because it has no client information or photos or whatever, right? But a cover letter gives your offer a personal touch and helps the buyer sell themselves. It personalizes it, right? Because like when a seller's looking at a contract, they're just seeing numbers and like probably greed, just being honest, like let's get this over with, like give me my money kind of thing, or give me my next house, so on. So this is a way to not only stand out to the agent. Now that the NAR has come out and kind of, you know, what's sort of like discouraged it, some agents are trigger shy and they won't actually show their sellers. 2 years ago, this was money. You could just like get any offer accepted with it. But my point is, cover letter will help you identify to that other agent and seller a little bit about your client, which will help then personalize your offer and essentially puppy dog close them, because then they're going to feel bad. Oh, this cute young family or what. Like, I have to be careful in what I tell you guys, because that's like using protected class words, right? Like you never use anything in there, obviously, that's like racial or like whatever. Like, no, you stay away from that. But you can still, I'll show you example. You can still use this to like classify or personalize your offer. But their example is the date. Like, so obviously your name, the date, the seller's names, your contact info. Thank you for taking the time to review our offer to purchase your home. Provide a brief description of your clients making an offer. Explain why your clients are attracted to this property. Describe your client's plans to the property or for the property after the purchase. And then thank you for your time. We look forward to working with you on the sale of your home. Sincerely, client names. So that's like very basic. I'm going to show you mine. It's like a little more personalized. And honestly, somewhat of a gray area, like I say, so you don't have to do this, but it works. So here's one I just had Kenzie and Glenn do for this house. So it's like yesterday pretty much, or Sunday or something like that. My name is Kenzie. My husband's name is Glenn. So on and so forth. We've been married for a little over a year. So brief description of them, what they're doing. I even have them talk about their work, like their like current life goals, like whatever, just to like, you know, like this is a step in the right direction for us, so on and so forth. We've been renting up to this point. We feel strongly it is time for us to start a new chapter in our lives. We loved how happy the house was. We noticed a lot of great features like the fireplace, spacious kitchen. You're basically like making it sound chocolatey to the seller, right? We could imagine our own little family running around, whatever. We have mortgage pre-approval. We're flexible, any stipulations it may have. So stuff like that always helps because when they read the letter, it's like a little bit about us, why we love your home. We're willing to do what it takes. Consider us. Thank you. Sincerely, the Wares. And then there's some photos of them, and the seller gets to see that with the offer. Like I say, not every agent is going to review that. It may even straight out offend some agents. So if you want to be extra safe, you could always just say to the agent, how do you feel about buyer letters? I just take the gamble because it's won me so many offers at this point.
Does the MLS says no love letters?
Correct. Yeah. So that you can see that. And then you can also ask the agent if you're especially getting started, if you're a little scared about it, like that's fine. Most of the time I just send it and like I'll get a response from the agent. As you know, NAR said we shouldn't present them. So I'm not going to. I'm like, oh, you're totally fine. Like I say, like I usually just say, like, I know it's just helped before. So I still do it. Like until they make it, unless it's illegal, like I'm going to lose my license because of it, I'm going to keep doing it because I'm telling you, I have got buyers accepted with terrible offers. Not saying to lowball people and use buyer letters to cover it, like be a good agent negotiator. But like last year we'd have offers where, let's say there's, I don't know, 10 offers and there's a cash offer on the table. My client's second or third place, but my client, like their client is biased now because of this. I don't know, I guess what it is.
Depends on the seller.
Yeah,
Whether they're
it's a total
emotions or just
logical.
statistics.
Yeah, I have one client who's like, I don't give it, like I'll read the buyer letters and like kind of laugh because I'm not picking their offer. I'm like, okay, like you're cruel, but like whatever.
Then you get stressed out. Like mine was like, we're in our 70s, our 40-year-old
Oh.
son is disabled. Your house is
So-
perfect because now we don't have to worry about stairs.
Mhm. So I'm a hypocrite.
Sorry, I feel bad, but
I can't, yeah. I'm a hypocrite. When I'm representing a seller, I absolutely do not show them these letters. Terrible idea. It's a terrible idea because it's gonna further complicate things. But that's something to protect your seller from, but also your buyer. It's leverage. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's no different than, it is very different than a pre-approval letter, but do what you can to help your buyers is my point, especially when they're like disadvantaged as it is. But here's another one from the Mesas, right? So what I do normally, I ask my client, if you're comfortable doing this, this is something that's worked for us in the past. Here's a few examples of my past clients' letters. Feel free to write one of your own, and usually they'll draft something up, and then we'll fill it out on whether to submit it with the offer. But yeah, I mean, it's worked too much for me not to do, just to be honest with you. So that being said, that's the idea of a cover letter for your clients. Moving on. So what objections do you think? Let me go through this real quick. So yeah, humanize the offer, summarize the offer. Obviously, if you can, it talks about bringing your laptop and tablet with your clients so they can see everything ahead of time. So I give an example of time at Humanize for my clients. Yeah, I don't know, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything for this. Like I say, half the time I never do this. And then I go through the slides and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna like get the whiteboard and go nuts, and tell you guys some stuff. But with that being said, so next step is we don't have to necessarily role play, I don't really care, but we can just openly talk about it. So most agents will experience objections from their buyers when it comes to making an offer on a home. I referenced earlier, people get really timid with contracts. I have a family I worked with, like probably my first month in real estate, and I am like sick and like, not because I'm greedy and like want to make money, but I'm like actually genuinely sick and they didn't buy a house because we found so many valid options for them back in 2019. And they were just so scared of contracts. Like they were just like, we'll just keep looking. We'll just keep looking. We'll just keep looking. That went on for 3 years. And now the house they could have bought for $300,000 in Pleasant Grove is a $550,000 house. Like it's just like, that's a whole thing. But again, that's why becoming good about your education and expectation, that is what establishes you as the professional in the relationship and someone that they can truly trust. Because if you're just the type of person that's like there are certain agents that teach like how to sell houses, like when you walk through a house, how to sell your client on it. And like, you can definitely in a non-greedy way, like help your client make a good decision and reference things like, hey, do you remember when, like, you don't literally sound like this, but like if your client's like, a big backyard is so important, like, wow, I love the fact this house is a big backyard. Like, I know you said it was important to you, right? Stuff like that is fine. But there are some agents that are just greedy and just like try to pressure people to write offers. I don't do that. I very much let my client make their own decision, but I followed it up with, like I say, education, expectation. So they know, like I had, like I say, the Glenn and Kenzie buyer over the weekend. They were like, oh, well, we're just afraid if we write an offer, this house will lose. And I'm like, you should think the opposite. You should honestly be hoping that you either win or lose and write the offer either way, because you're either going to win and it's going to be a piece of cake and we're going to be happy, or we're going to lose and we're going to have strategy because we're going to get feedback on the offer we wrote. That's going to allow us to write a better offer next time, right? If you send an offer in and you're 10th place because every other offer didn't ask for closing costs and had a 5-day due diligence instead of a 21-day, like stupid stuff like that, right? Then you can, and that's another thing with certain clients who have like, I'm just going to lowball and see what happens. Get feedback, because that seller says, yeah, your offer was awful. Like we would have never accepted it. Hey, the seller's agent said your offer was awful and they wouldn't have accepted it. You allow yourself to get feedback for offers you write to then help educate your client on what to do next time, because you don't have to tell them, hey, your offer was bad. You just say, okay, like I gave you the information and what I thought was right. You know, you kind of like, it's ultimately, you just tell them what you think, and then they are the ones that tell you what to write, because you can't say, oh, let me just send you this contract to sign, like just go with it. Like they have to willingly be initiated in that sense, right? So some objections. So there are, I don't know if you guys have your Ignite books. If not, it's fine. But apparently there's on page 8 some objections. It's common for buyers to want to request the seller make repairs in their offer. So there's a script in the Ignite book that helps you guys make, essentially set expectations for getting repairs to the offer, and to help them not have objections about certain houses. And then when clients want to make a very low offer right out of the gate, you want to make sure they know the possible repercussions of making a low offer. So I have a client from California right now who's a cash buyer up to like 1.8 million. We've looked at, I don't know, 15 to 20 houses in Salt Lake City. And every time he like lowballs by like 50,000. But the last time we wrote offers, we were able to get feedback from those agents and, you know, demonstrate to him why that wasn't the best idea. And how, even though, because he's like, cash is king, they'd rather pick my cash offer. And I'm like, in Utah, not a chance. People are greedy. They will happily wait 20 days to make an extra $1,000, like straight up, you know. If it's nominal, like I say, not literally $1,000, like if it's $1,000 difference, pick the cash offer. But if it's 10 to 20 grand, like I'll wait 2 weeks for an extra 10,000. I'm not stupid, you know. So they wanted me to have you break into pairs and talk about scripts. Honestly, I don't really, if you want to do that, you can. I really don't care. But what are some things that you guys think could be potential, like I mentioned, the contract thing? You may not know this one, that's fine. But what are some potential things you think could make buyers nervous to write an offer? One of them, like I say, off the cuff, could be lack of knowledge of the contract. What could you do to help offset that objection? Educate them right on the contract. So you don't have to actually sit down with like a fine-tooth comb and go through the contract with them, every little word. Like they're welcome to read it when you send a Docusign or have them sign it. If they have any questions, like I just let my clients know, I'm going to send this to you. There's a, like, I make it super simple. I'll send my clients, let's say I'm sending them like the buyer broker agreement or those type of documents. I'll say, okay, there's going to be like a million things, but basically what this means is this. This document is saying you're okay to work with me. It talks about how I get paid. It talks about everything like that. If you have any questions, let me know, right? This document is wire fraud. Basically, don't send money to strangers, right? Make sure you verify before you send money to people that you're not just clicking some like email from Uganda or something, right? And so on, right? So that's super simple. That's one of the objections, like I say, I've gotten a lot, especially from first-time buyers, or I work with Spanish-speaking clients. They seem to be fairly timid about contracts, which is understandable, because I think a lot of people in that position that don't understand English, or you know, whatever, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't want to get taken advantage of. So I feel like it's our duty to take the time to really educate them, but in a way that's like easily digestible. You don't have to just like information dump on them, try to help them understand a contract. Like that's why we're here, right? We were educated to help make that easy for them in a sense. But if you guys can think of any other objections, if not, that's fine. We can talk about whatever you guys need to regarding that.
Hey, Riley, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what about the maybe kind of the opposite of this? So I wrote an offer for some buyers over the weekend, and walking through the open house, we were told that they have 3 cash offers and they are over like $50,000 over the asking price.
Mm-hmm.
And my buyers just don't have that kind of leverage. And so obviously I'm going to do everything that my buyers want me to do. But I mean, ultimately, they probably aren't going to be accepted, right? So when we write the offer, I wrote the offer and I sent it over, but I don't know, in the back of my head, I was just like, this is kind of a waste of time, because I just don't feel like they're going to be accepted. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the buyers wanted to write an offer, but I just don't want them to be like, really, I was just trying to like, I want to prevent like heartbreak for them. You know what I mean? Because they're first time home buyers and this is their first offer and they're so excited, but I'm just like, it's
you
$50,000
see,
over.
like,
There's no way you can compete with that.
Right. You're not emotional about it. You're more logical. And for them, they're like, maybe there's like a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been there. So last year I had a client that I wrote like 27 offers for in the course of 2 months. And that's 27 offers written on houses we saw, but we probably saw like, I have no idea. Whatever, like, let's say they're like 1 out of 3 houses, you do the math, it's like 70 houses we showed them. But besides the point, that was fairly normal. I don't, like I say, I'm not ever the type of person with my clients. Like I talk to you guys as if I'm very firm. Like I have like that's not how I am with my clients. Like you never want to be the person that's like, this is a waste of time. That's stupid. Like there's no point in belittling or like you have to just use, like I'm more of a show me, don't tell me kind of person. If you explain something to them repeatedly, like I told that California buyer like 7 times, I'm like, okay, I know you're not emotional about it. I know that you're very logical. I know you're looking for a deal. That's fine. And I'm okay to show you these houses and write these offers, but it's not going to happen the first time. Like we're probably going to write 10 to 15 offers before someone is in a position where they're going to accept your offer that's 50,000 below asking when they have offers above asking price, right? Like, does that make sense, right? So in this case, if your client wants to write an offer, write the offer, set the expectation, right? So you can just let them know, as long as they knew that there were cash offers, they know they're probably doing the, I guess, identifying in their head that there's probably a chance they're not going to win. But if they want to, I always just use the word throw your name in the hat. If you just want to throw your name in the hat and see what happens, I'm fine with that. Worst case, we get feedback and we get to know exactly what that agent thought about how our offer was written outside of the cash offers, right? Like use it as an education piece at the least, right? Because a lot of agents, if you call them up after and say, hey, I knew we were going to get smoked, like no duh. My clients just want to write the offer. Could you at least tell me how you felt like we wrote the offer? Well, honestly, we had 3 other financing offers. Yours was the worst of those 3 because of this reason. Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to use this as like, it'll take you 25 minutes to write the offer, maybe an hour's time to do the whole process, but you could easily turn that into a educational point for your buyer to say, okay, on the next one, if there's 10 cash offers, if you want to write an offer, sure, but we're probably not going to win. But let's at least get feedback and see what we could have done better in our offer, assuming those weren't on the table, like even just that, right? So you never want to be so firm. Like there's a lot of agents that are kind of bulldoggy, or like I use the term like, shut up and let me do my job. I don't actually, like, I'm not saying I use that term to my clients, but that's how I think of those agents, is they're very much like the hoity-toity professional that's too good to take chances or use. Like you have to see the good in everything, and you have to use everything possible to further set those expectations and educate your buyer or even seller to get the result they're looking for.
Okay.
And with that situation, I would have even just been told the agent like, hey, like from the sounds of it, we probably don't have a chance. We're going to send something in anyways. If something happens with those, like cash buyers are fickle. Like they sound so strong until it comes down to the wire, and half of them are, I mean, not really, I shouldn't put that expectation in your head, but like I would say most cash buyers are BSers, just being straight with you. Like they're ready to play and like on the contract, but when it comes time to actually like move forward, some don't. And obviously the market determines that. Lately, they've been definitely more solid. 2 years ago, if you saw a cash buyer, it's like, maybe, so I would just try to at least have your name in the hat and let the other agent know, hey, we're going to send this in. We're probably not going to win. If something happens to the other cash buyers, consider us a backup at the very least, or give us a second chance kind of thing. Does that answer your question though? Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, that was helpful. I actually had a buyer that I helped a year ago that I called the agent and I spoke to her and I said, hey, this is what we're kind of looking at offering. I know it was lower than asking price, but the house had been on the market for like 6 months, and it was contingent upon his property selling. And the listing agent was like, nope, there's no way my buyer or my sellers will never accept an offer that is contingent upon a property. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of what I thought, but I just thought I'd check. Well, my buyer insisted that I put in the offer, and I did it, and he won. And he's now been in that house for a year. So even sometimes the listing agents don't know what their sellers are going to actually choose. So
yeah, I 100% agree. And that's also stupid for that listing agent to discourage an offer that's been on a house that's been on the market 6 months. So you could turn them in and with an ethics complaint and get them fined for that, honestly. So that's a good talking point too. Never discourage anybody from writing an offer on your listing. So there's 2 things you can do when you're representing a seller. You can always take this approach and ask for permission from the seller to disclose offer details to other agents, right? I always do that, but I don't do that fully. Like you'll notice I'm kind of a shithead, right? Because I say one thing and like I'm best practice over here, but then I kind of will massage that a bit depending on the circumstance. But that's how you have to be. You have to have an understanding of everything and use it when it's applicable. So I'll give you an example. With the seller, right? I don't ever show them buyer letters, but I use them on the buyer side. Does that make me a hypocrite? 100%. But does it get my clients results? 100%. And that's ultimately why they hire me, right? So I just kind of lost my train of thought. Going back to, let's see, what did you just tell me? Oh yeah, the listing agent thing. So I would never discourage any buyer from writing an offer on my listing. If they call me and they say, hey, what other offers do you have in hand? I will normally give them a realistic sense, but I will never say anything that fully discourages them. I'm never going to say, oh man, we got 10 cash offers. Like, don't waste your time. No, honestly, I would just say, put your best foot forward. We do have some strong offers, but anything at this point, anything could go. So, this is kind of what my seller's looking for. You always bring it back to what my client wants. Here's kind of what we're thinking, but we'd love to see your offer either way. Because then obviously it takes more work as a listing agent, whatever, to go through maybe 5 crappy offers, but I'd rather have 15 than 10, not only for the fact that I want a good track record, I want to shine like a diamond to my client, but also it's more options. Like what if I have literally had it where I get 5 offers on a listing, we sit down to review, 3 of them end up not being we are like, okay, we're going to counter this person. And by Monday they go, oh, we actually changed our mind. Oh, that was our best offer, crap. Well, we got 4 more and we've gone through 3 before we get the 3rd one to finally accept. And even in that situation too, I never called the second listing agent and go, oh my gosh, the first person said, never mind. And do you think your client would still be interested? No, I go, hey, they're just not being super responsive. And that kind of makes us a little nervous to work with them. If I send you a counter before that they sign theirs, do you think you would sign it? Right? That's kind of like, I'm kind of lying, I guess, I don't know, but I'm never going to show my cards and say, hey, 3 of our best offers just fell through and that's why I'm calling you. You got to spin it in a way that's going to get your client the best still, and also keep the excitement alive on that other buyer. Hey, it's your lucky day. Like, I just had this other person actually change their mind. I've got one other offer, but I really liked you when you called me the other day. So I figured I'd give you the first chance. You always have to do what you can to spin things in a way that's going to best benefit your client, both on the buy and sell side. And like I say, you never want to discourage as a listing agent anybody to write an offer, because you never know what's going to happen. Like, just because you have 10 offers doesn't mean, actual all 10 of them are going to stick, if that makes sense. Present the offer. Let's go through this. Any questions on Zoom or for you guys? Okay. Presenting an offer. So we've written an offer. The next step is to present the offer to a seller. In this section, we'll review how to present the offer to a buyer's agent, or as a buyer's agent, how to receive an offer as a seller's agent. We've talked about a little bit of this already. We'll go through it though. So notify the listing agent of an incoming offer. I typically will ask a certain series of questions when I call the listing agent. So I'll call and say, hey, this is Riley with KW. Just got done showing your listing on whatever. Do you have any offers currently? Oh, yeah, we've got 5, let's say. Okay, great. And what's important to your client on this one? I really just want to write an offer that's gonna stick or whatever. Okay, well, we have my client wanting to buy another house, so they'd love some extra time. They're really hoping for someone that's flexible. We don't want to have to negotiate on repairs too much. It is an older home, we know that, but we've tried doing our best to fix it, whatever, like the whole spiel. Okay, great. So it sounds to me like they're looking for someone who's flexible, who's not super nitpicky, and who can accommodate their timeline. Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, great. Well, these other offers that you have, do you have permission to talk about terms? I don't. I can't really tell you exactly. Well, that's totally fine. I'm just trying to get a realistic sense. I know it's listed at 375. Do you have any offers that are above 400 right now? They may say, I can't tell you that. Okay, no problem. You always want to try, like it never hurts to ask. Some agents you call them and they're just mean. They're not super accommodative. They're like, yeah, we're looking for this. Send your offer by Sunday. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, bye, kind of thing. And there are other ones that are willing to kind of have dialogue with you. Those are the ones that obviously are the best, because especially if you can just keep the conversation going, like not like uncomfortably, but naturally keep it going and flowing. A lot of the time, by the end of it, they're like, oh, it's so refreshing to talk to you. Thank you for actually taking the time to call me and ask me these questions. Like, I really look forward to seeing your offer. And I'm always like, yeah, I really hope we can work together, right? You try to be friendly because they're going to feel that. Send the offer to the agent. So I'll show you guys this real quick. And I'm happy to send it out to you guys if you want. Let's see. So this is like a basic email template I use for when I submit an offer to agents. So say, hey, Sean, thanks for chatting with me yesterday. I really appreciate you being willing to talk with me to verify what all is important to your clients and giving us a shot to potentially get their incredible home. This would be a perfect home for my clients, and they would jump at the opportunity to make this transaction for your clients painless. Communication and teamwork are the most important parts of the transaction for me. My clients sincerely love the home and are ready to make this an easy transaction for everyone involved. My clients are fully approved to purchase and are hoping to get a home like this in this crazy market. We are ready to make this quick and painless and have structured timelines accordingly. If something stronger comes in, let us know. I would love the opportunity to work with you and make this happen for us. Me know if you receive this or have any questions about how I've structured the offer. Look forward to hearing from you soon. So that's like one simple, that's more of like heavy on like the excitement type of thing. I've also used different email templates where I actually break down the offer terms where, you know, I'm like, we've offered this much money, you know, I played around with it. I like this just because I feel like, I don't know, that's just what's worked for me. Honestly, I don't really know why. But you can also, like I've seen other agents, like I say, they send the offer, but they actually break down the offer in the email. So, but I am going to read the contract, but I wouldn't really have to based on what they, you know, sent. There's a lot of different things like that, but that's personally what I use because I feel like it's friendly and that's kind of how I guess try to come across to people. So again, send the offer to the agent, set a deadline. So that's in the contract. When do you want an acceptance by? Create the offer in command and then consult with your buyer when the seller responds. So if the seller responds and says, hey, or the seller's agent says, hey, you know, we have this many other offers or whatever, we're going to actually do a highest and best by Monday now because we had 10 offers and we don't know what one to pick. We just want to see who's willing to step up. Okay, well, obviously you want to bring that information to your buyer. Or, hey, they're going to counter you. I know you said your house is contingent, but they really want to accept an offer that's contingent. What can we do on our end to, you know, solidify that? So that could be, hey, can we get confirmation from the lender that you can qualify without selling your home? Or how quick can they close your loan? And, you know, like whatever, like, or let's say we have your house under contract already. Like there's so many different angles you can work at it, but that's kind of when you obviously consult with your buyer to set that up. Like I had one, I don't know, summer of last year in Santa Quinn, where I put the seller's house under contract with like 5 offers. And then we went and made an offer on another house in Santa Quinn and the seller would not accept a contingent offer. Well, we're actually contingent, like we have to sell their house to close. Called the lender, turns out they could qualify just barely with the amount of money they had in their bank account to put down on this other house. And then we'd obviously have to sell this one. Like it would be a whole mess, but we can make it happen. So I wrote the offer, not contingent, beat multiple offers in this other house, closed their house in time and it ended up all working out. But it was just being creative and seeing what you can do, not what you can't do, right? Trying to focus on being optimistic. That's basically it for there. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything over here. I'll speed this up because I know we only got like 40 minutes left, but always good to have your first few offers reviewed by another agent that's, you know, been experienced, just so you guys know that everything you're writing is good. Also to just get advice, like it never hurts. Like you guys can always hit me up if you guys have questions on an offer. I'm happy to give you my opinion. Like I don't know if Tristan was down here earlier. He's hit me up a bunch of times. Like I've helped a lot of the newer agents through here because I know when I was a new agent, I was always just trying to be a sponge and get everybody's kind of perspective and try to get, you know, kind of build my own from there. The presentation of the offer is just important as the contents because, like I say, if you just shotgun over an email that has no spice to it with a contract and no pre-approval letter, like that doesn't look good, right? This is your opportunity to describe your clients. You can obviously mention your cover letter, the buyer letter, like we talked about, and then let the listing agent know you have an offer for their client. Perform these steps in a timely manner. Obviously, you'll find out preliminarily when they're going to review offers, so you guys can set that up in time. And then once you've presented the offer and submitted it, this ball's in the seller's court. Just make sure that you are available and accessible when the agent calls you. So if they call you to say, hey, you know, we're going to counter you, you're available, you don't ghost them for 3 days and end up missing the opportunity for your client.
How do you deal with that? Like Jen is not available after 7 o'clock on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Available today on Saturday. And then, you know, if it's on the weekend, something like that, where you can't get a hold of your TC to handle that stuff, what do you do?
Yeah, and by stuff, so I'm not all the way familiar with what she takes care of for you guys, but so let's say you guys today, I get a client for you, guys have to write an offer. Do you write the offer or is it her?
Well, so we have to have them look at the offer before we can submit it. So it's like, well, okay, it's Saturday at 4 o'clock. There's nobody that
Call me.
so that because it's like Dean has to look at it. Carl,
Yeah, you guys have like your. If it were me, I would ask them for permission to pick 1 or 2 other agents in the office that you can have as a plan B, or what plan D.
You don't want to wait till Saturday night and say, hey, Carl, can I? No, Carl's not answering his phone. Johnny, can I do this?
Oh, not. Yeah, I would. It never hurts. And there's always, I mean, I don't know. In this situation, dealing with contracts, you know, like if you are like, I don't know, when I first started, so I kind of like cheated the brokerage model because you're supposed to go into the coaching that you guys do right now with Shoni, or I guess with Carl, is amazing. What was available when I started personally didn't really feel like it was that amazing, but it was required, but I didn't do it. I found another agent in the office to mentor me under the table, and I paid him for one of my transactions to run me through it. And then I just was free reign from there. But I just made sure I learned enough from him initially to get through that. So I just say build your base of people you can rely on. Obviously, you've got 4 people off the cuff, but I would also just double check and see in the event, like it's probably not going to happen. They'll probably be accessible. Someone will answer, but if not, who's your 1 or 2 other agents you can consult with? Because like even to this day, I've got 3 agents that I will consistently bother if I have questions on comps, or I am like, what do I do in this situation? Like it never ends. And even those agents, they have agents that they talk to. Like it never hurts to have kind of like your advisors around you. So if you get in a pinch and you're like, I just really need a second opinion, you have people you can rely on. Especially in that case where if they're not available through certain times. I know, unfortunately for me, a lot of my business happens when it's inconvenient. Like I'll have dinner at 5 and guess what? A client wants to write an offer at 4:30. Well, I'm just gonna do it. Like I've figured out my systems enough to be able to do that quickly and efficiently without it completely interrupting things. But I would never also not take the opportunity because of that. Like if it's like no one's answering, but I really need to submit this offer for my client, don't do it on your own. I'm not encouraging that, but find someone who can help you. You know what I mean? Someone on this wall, ideally.
Just like when I sold my first one, the team I was on, just let us know, we'll go over the offer with you. So it was, I was planning on listing it I listed the third day, and then we'll give it a week, and then we'll review it the next weekend. Well, that's 63 people come through the open house the first day, have 9 offers by Satchel. 72 hours later, I was like, okay,
You can't wait, yeah.
And they're in Mexico for 5 days. They're not answering their phones. They're not. It's like, well, I can't wait on you guys. So I went through the offers. I sent them an offer. And feedback. He's like, well, what did you do? Why didn't you wait for me to? I had to have my offer in by Monday at noon or whatever. I couldn't wait for you to come back
From Mexico, yeah, for sure. No, so that's why I think and that's good that you asked that question, because it's good to be thinking that way, like the what ifs, because they come up for sure. Even the same thing, make sure you pick a lender who gives a crap. Don't pick a lender who's too busy for you, because if it's Saturday and you have a question, like you have a question, not just like, you know what I mean? Like a serious circumstance arises and they're unavailable. They don't work weekends. Like they're in the wrong business. It sucks for them, work with people and get like I say, your support system with people who are willing to help and are excited about the opportunity to be in this business or, be accessible to you. Other than that, yeah, that's all for presenting the offer. So role play, we kind of already talked about a little bit of that. Hopefully that was helpful. Any questions on Zoom? I need to include you guys more. I kind of suck at that. I'm sorry. And you guys are also welcome just to chime in whenever. I don't mind if you interrupt me. Representing the seller. So receiving the offer, gathering information about the buyer, presenting the offer to your client, and then responding to the offer. So obviously the goal here is to have a system in place to make sure you're not missing anything like we just talked about. A great example with your sellers going to Mexico. So checklist for reviewing an offer. So address, be sure that the address is correct for the house. Price, obviously check and see if it falls in the range of seller's expectations. Earnest money, make sure it's acceptable. And the amount, as well as the context, like we talked about, if it's going to title, if it's going to trust account, so on. Time for acceptance, check to see how long your seller has to respond. Be sure to get the content initialed by your seller if you go over the time limit. Pre-approval, verify the buyer is pre-approved by a lender. I always call the lender too on my offers that I'm reviewing for a seller, and I pick their brain. So, hey, have you reviewed their assets? Like with a pre-approval, there's something called a pre-qual, which is like they just told the lender their information but didn't submit anything and they got a number. There's a pre-approval, which is they submitted their information, the lender reviewed it and ran it through an automated system to see if it worked. And then there's a step even further, like an underwritten pre-approval, which is where they actually gave the information to an underwriter, so a person, not just a program, to review the information and make sure it's going to fit based on the guidelines of the program. That's the most assured, right? So always verify. Is this a pre-qual? Like, did they submit an application? Did you review do you have a verification of employment? Do you know how much money they have in their bank account? What have you actually looked into? And if there's any like I can tell that they didn't really do a thorough job, then I don't say, hey, we're not going to accept your buyer's offer. I just say, hey, thanks for the information. I appreciate it. Make notes, right? And make sure you bring it up to the seller. So if it's your best offer, but you're a little about it, it could be risky. But
so do they give you a pre-approval letter before they underwrite? Or
No, and that's the thing is and because pre-approval letters for most lenders are so cookie cutter and copy and paste, they just change the buyer name half the time. What they say on there could not even be accurate. It could say on there it's been through AUS, which is automated underwriting, and you could call them and they say, no, we've sent it to an underwriter, but you didn't say it in the pre-approval letter. It could say AUS on the pre-approval letter, and you could call them and they could go, oh, it's just a pre-call. This guy called me last week. I haven't really talked too much. Do you know what I mean? So that's why verifying those things is very important, because I've had it. I'll tell you an example. My first listing, my second or third listing, I had a buyer that I accepted their offer. Their lender was Wells Fargo. On the pre-approval letter, they'd been through underwriting and everything. Come to find out, they didn't even verify if this person was a U.S. citizen, and it killed our deal 3 days before closing, because the Wells Fargo ordered the appraisal. They went through everything, and they had never even underwritten. Like, I don't know, this is stupid, but besides the point. So you guys want to make sure. I learned that early on. Loan approval, be sure to have a specific date for a formal and final loan approval. So I always ask, how long are your turn times currently? The offer says 25 days. Are you okay with that timeline? If the lender goes, oh, we actually need 28, well, then you know that the agent is not in close communication. Does that make sense? You're kind of like testing the validity of how much preliminary work they did for this client. Yeah, for sure. And a good lender, I should rephrase this. A standout lender is one that calls you when you're just like, oh, you get the offer, next thing your phone's ringing. It's like, hey, this is so-and-so first call, and you just want to let you know my, so-and-so just submitted an offer. I verified everything. Then you know it's a stud. Like, you're like, okay, that person is solid, right?
So does that usually come from the lender, or does that come from the seller agent asking the lender to?
Kind of both. Yeah, it's usually initiated by the agent, unless like the lender has a process for that they preliminary do. But usually when I submit an offer, I sometimes will CC I'll tell the lender always, but I'll CC the lender on the email, especially if it's one on like really, really, really like it's tight, wanting to do it. I'll CC the lender on the email, and at the bottom, I'll put, like Eric, so-and-so's phone number is right here for you to get a hold of them. So they get the email, they know. So there's like a lot of ways you can be creative about that, but it's always best practice to just make sure your lender knows you submitted an offer on a property, just so they know, like, they're expecting it in case someone reaches out to them. And then even you could ask them, hey, would you be willing to call this person for me? I just submitted an offer. It'll help you stand out for sure. That agent will know that you're solid, because you're doing so much more than just hitting send and not ever calling or texting them or so on and so forth. Financing terms, like I say, make sure financing terms are agreeable to the seller. So that could be VA, FHA, conventional, seller finance, so on and so forth. Closing date, make sure the closing date on the offer will work for your seller's schedule. And then home warranty, it's cut off, but review any home warranty considerations. So that's pretty much it for there. So we talked about a little bit on that already, like going through command, writing up your notes, and looking the same ways you look at terms when you're writing an offer is the same way you look at them when you're reviewing, because it's the same contracts. You're just going through and verifying all the changeable details and taking notes and making sure you're familiar. Having a checklist is super important as well, just because it's going to help you not make mistakes and miss any details. And then you can also just kind of get a feel for how things are going to go. So I'll give you a couple examples. There's been times when I have multiple offers and it's getting down to the wire. My clients have never even seen any of these offers, and I'll reach out to the agents and I'll say, hey, just letting you know you're in the top 3. I'm not certain my sellers are going to accept your offer, but I just want to know if you're flexible at all in case we need to counter you. You'd be surprised just asking that simple question how many agents are like, oh yeah, my clients are willing to come up 10 grand, or oh yeah, they're willing to do this. And then I'm like, I don't know why you didn't write that in the offer. That would have like smoked these other 2 offers. But like, okay, cool, thanks for letting me know. Then like I had one, actually the condo's right behind the brokerage wherever we're at, right? Those ones over there. I sold a listing over there. And the agent's daughter was one of the buyers. And then I had 2 other offers as well. And I called the agent to ask her that question. And she just goes, yeah, honestly, I've been thinking about it. I'm going to waive 2% of my commission to make sure she wins this house. And I was like, sweet. So by the time I sat down with my seller, I just made him another 6 grand, or I don't know, it was like 4,000 or whatever 2% is at the time. You know what I mean? Like, just I was like surprised by that. And I wasn't pushing them. I wasn't like purposely trying to do that, but just by asking simple questions like that, people sometimes are just weak and they cave in, or they tell you what they like, what they're kind of like last ditch. They show their cards basically, right? And that will help you, because in negotiations you go, this offer said this, but when I spoke to the agent, they mentioned this. We'll keep that in mind. So in case they want to counter them or whatever. Presenting the offer to the seller. So notify the seller of offers. So for me, I'll let my seller know preliminarily, hey, we're going to list the house on Wednesday. We're going to do showings through the weekend, open house on Saturday. If we get multiple offers, we'll review Sunday night or Monday. So they already know, like, even if I get an offer Friday, I'm telling agents we're not reviewing until Monday, and my seller knows that, so they're not jumping the gun like, let's accept the first offer we get. I set those expectations up front. Update the CMA, put the offer into perspective given the current market. Present the offer, so price, repairs, buyer motivation, contingencies, and then decision. obviously your seller will say, we like this offer, or we want to change these terms or whatever, and then you can go from there. Another thing that's best practice, just random, on your listings, you can actually attach the comps that you've pulled. So always verify these with a more experienced agent until you get to the point where you're like, very competent in that area. But if I have a house, I had one in Orem that we could not decide where to list it because like it was just all over the place. Like if you looked within 1 mile, there was nothing that is sold. If you look within all of Orem, you're a $550,000 to a $780,000 range. You know what I mean? And it's like, it was justifiably just because of this specific neighborhood this house was in. It was on a higher price point, but it wasn't in the nicest area. It wasn't, you know what I'm saying? It was kind of difficult. So we ended up listing it for like, I don't know, 679 or 689. And we ended up closing it at 706 cash. But when I pulled comps, I even asked like more experienced agents like Clay Winder in the office, and he's like, oh, 650 all day long. It's 650. We closed it at 706. Do you see how like getting an opinion or what you think, it's always good to get a second opinion, because 10 agents could look at the same house and have a $50,000 spread, each of them. You know what I'm saying? But what I did to help us get offers that high is I actually attached the higher comps to the listing. And so when agents would call, how do you feel like it's going to appraise? I would reference those. They'd go look at them and they'd go, oh, this looks like a good deal. And we got a cash offer with no contingencies at 706, which is nuts. Responding to the offer. So we'll go through that real quick. And like I say, like your guys' coaching program is amazing. Like Shoni and obviously now Carl have produced some really sharp agents. So I have no doubt that's going to happen. But if I can ever be a resource to you, I'm super happy to. Going back to reaching a decision, I'm just going to touch on this real quick. So again, they can accept, they can counter, or they can reject the offer. Any questions with that on Zoom or in person? No? Okay, let's see. So that's next. Like I say, counter, that sparks a negotiation, accepts the offer, begins a contract to close, rejects the offer. So that's when you contact them and say no. Role play, respond to the offer. Again, that was pretty much talked about. I've been rambling on. Recaps and ahas. So what do you feel like we talked about today that was helpful? Is there anything that I've mentioned? I'm kind of long-winded. I know I've mentioned a lot, but is there anything that you guys want me to deep dive into more, or you have questions about what we've talked about this time? Okay. It talks about daily success habits. So you guys already know about that. Having your conversations. So it's like 10 contacts, 10 conversations, 10 handwritten notes, 10 home previews. That's from Ignite. Your coaching program has you probably doing some other stuff as well. Scripts, you guys already know about that. Talks about script practice. So today, set aside some time to look over your scripts and whatnot, and then do your lead gen. I'm not going to make you guys, a long time ago at Ignite did actually make us sit here and make calls. So be lucky that we don't do the same. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's all I got. So if there's nothing else you guys want to go through, then we should be golden. Make sure I'm not missing anything on here. Should be golden.
For your offers letters and stuff, that you send,
Yeah.
you want us just email you?
Yeah, I can.
Copy of that, or-
Yeah, that's totally fine. If you guys want to email me, I will just forward. I can send you guys an example of some of my buyer letters, and I'm happy to send you the email script that you guys can use for like submitting your offers. Let's see. I wonder if I could put a message in Zoom. That might be the easiest way to go about it. I don't know how. Yeah. What was that? Oh, I was trying to like put a message into Zoom, but I'll chat right there. Oh yeah, he sent it too.
Just take your business card there and attach it in.
Oh, on the email?
Yeah, just take that.
Oh, I don't know if it'll. Yeah, let's see. I can try to find it real quick. I know where downloads would be.
Show it.
Where at?
Down by the downloads, in the bottom left corner.
Okay. Get documents or what?
Well, just go right here in your. Yeah,
Oh, show in folder. I see what you're saying.
show folder, I'll tell you where it's at. Yeah, it's in your downloads folder.
Okay. That'll work. Well, I appreciate you guys making time for me today. Hopefully that was helpful. We're not gonna exit this. Let's see. As long as you guys have any questions on Zoom, I'm gonna try to figure out how to end this.